on Facebook, and they have it for like 4, 5, 6 hours. With, you know, your computer screen.
You were saying that they should read the terms and conditions for Facebook.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Why not read it? Yeah. I mean, you still might agree, but at least you read it.
Ago.
Amen.
Ago.
Amen.
Ago. All right, we have a little bit of a shift in venues due to poor planning on the part of someone whose name I will not say. But on behalf of African Studies, and somehow I'm a part of this organization, I think I have to take responsibility. But yeah, so we have some very interesting films. We're starting off with The Man Who Wanted to Fly, and it kind of is going to go into the Africans who travel abroad, outside, but specifically to China. But this one has a bit of a twist on it. So with no further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it. We try to start on time, but we're waiting for people. We know that because of the mix-up. But again, thank you for coming and enjoy the film for today.
Thank you.
Doc, is someone upstairs? Do they know to notify people to let them know?
Yeah, I put. Ago.
Amen.
Ago.
Amen.
Ago.
Amen.
Those who haven't woken up yet, please wake your neighbor. I think we had a very good series of films, a marathon series of films. As always, let me toss it out to the folks here. Any ideas, thoughts, reactions, questions? And we are pleased to have Prof. Niji Coker coming out of University of Missouri St. Louis. Who's here, if you can raise your hand?
Hey, hi. Pleasure to be here.
And he
Always
is,
good to be back.
he is the organizer, the overall organizer of this film festival, which is taking place in how many countries, how many locations?
10 different countries.
10 different countries, 10 different
7
locations.
years going.
Very good. So we hopped on board 4 years ago. 2015 was the first one. Doing it every year, so it's a tradition. Black History Month Film Festival, African World Documentary Film Festival collab. So any reactions to any of the films that you looked at?
You know, I found myself being, it was off-putting last night with the film about the Rastas in Ethiopia. You know, because there's so much of almost like an awe, a mystique. There's something that's, I don't know, ostensibly maybe legitimate or something about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and yet the way they were treating the Rastas was anything but enlightened, anything but reminiscent of divinity and consciousness. And it was kind of like more of the same, except this time in Ethiopia and this time in the Orthodox Church. And it's like, and you guys have the supposed Ark of the Covenant, and you're still wowing out. You know, so it was, you know, there was some edginess to it for me about it, and to hear them talking about their stories. And at some point, it's like, at what point do we vet these people and these claims and these things? Even if the vetting means, shouldn't this type of behavior and attitude result from this degree of spirituality that you're claiming? I mean, come on. You're claiming to have the Ark of the Covenant. If anybody should know something about something. Not that I even believe in any of that, but if I follow their narrative, I'm looking at this and I'm like, but how is your behavior any different than anyone else? It seems how you God's property and all that. Anywho, and then with today, I don't know, with the first movie, I think I was kind of like, yeah, let all dude go to China, let them work that out, you know, Nisha and Alchema, you know, just get it done. And then he came back, and then he went back, and then he came back, and then he was sort of back, and then, you know, did his wife come with him? I don't know. But that whole thing was, I was kind of lost in space behind that one. And I was struck by with the journalism piece in South Africa, the way that they spoke about it is always peculiar to me when people refer to those moments and those times with smiles and giggles and pleasantries and whatnot. And I think I get it that people call themselves trying to be professional and tactful and all of that. And I'm not expecting them, to get up, break up furniture, and hurl things across the room. But it's just always peculiar to me when people talk about children being shot in the streets and tortured, and army tanks going up and down the street. We can see them shooting at people, and the pregnant woman being carted off, arrested, I guess. And they're just kind of like, well, it was just a bit silly, I suppose. I'm thinking, a bit silly? Not that he used those exact words, but you know what I'm saying. And so that kind of had me feeling a certain kind of way. And then with all of the movies, especially the ones with the women, the mothers with the black sons yesterday, and the array of films that you've been showing in the film festival, I was musing to myself what that experience must be like for you personally, knowing what little I know about you. And I just trying to see him playing this movie. It's like, how did he choose that one? And what did he do with this one? And I wonder what it was like. How did he, So there was some musings about that one. But anyway, I'll stop there. But those are some of my.
I find it still difficult to swallow that as African people, and I'm looking at specifically the schools in South Africa, that still, regardless of apartheid, knowing our history, our culture for 5,000 to 6,000 years, our standard of beauty, our standard of excellence is still Europeans. The school, the more European you could be, you want to dress in a little European outfit with a tie, and that's excellent. That's looked upon as excellent. We're teaching you good character. But we're imitating somebody who doesn't have good character. And then we wonder why we get the results that we get. So, we're still upside down, inside out, and backwards, and we just don't get it. That as African people, our standard of excellence has to be the best that Africans have. Everybody has a classic. The Chinese have classics. It's the best that the Chinese have, right? Europeans have classics. The best. Africans have classics. But for some reason, here in Africa, the classics that we put before us is Europeans. And so, that just kind of put a chill through me. And at the same time, these Africans are professing that we're producing the very best. So I'm saying, if that's the very best, we're in bad shape. We got to regroup, reorganize, and we got to rethink, who are we, who were we, and who do we want to be? And we have to define that in an African paradigm if we are to exist. The theme, I'm still seeing this theme of European standards being the ultimate, no matter what theme. Or somebody else's standards, the black Bruce Lee. Okay, somebody else's standards is the ultimate.
Right.
The region.
That's,
I thought the same thing. I wondered did his wife go with him. Where's his wife and the child? But I was glad that he went back home in order to train his own people. Even though it was an Asian art, it was somebody who left and then came back home. So that's the part that I liked. But the fact that he doesn't know that that's on the Kemetic walls in Kemet, or what people now call Egypt, that quote-unquote martial arts, which is a horrible word, but martial arts comes from Kemet, and the fact that he doesn't even know that, doesn't even have a clue about that, is hurtful. you know. And then the one about South Africa, what I didn't like was that the white guy, I guess it was a professor or something, he was saying, oh, we're grappling with what's, you know, has happened and stuff like that. You're not grappling with anything, because if you were, then you wouldn't be there, you know. And also the white journalists, her saying, well, I don't care what color you are. Obviously you care what color you are and what color other people are, because you're asking black people. You know, you're asking African people. So you do care about color. There's no such thing as not seeing color or anything like that. You know, anybody who says that they don't see color actually is a danger. Right? Because that means that they don't want to acknowledge you as to who you are. So that's what I got from the films.
Okay.
I think it's about time we tell our own stories, because we're tired of people telling our stories for us. Because the same people who oppress us, the same people who put us in pain all the time, turn around and come again and be like they want to pacify us, tell our story for us. We don't know how to tell our story. We don't even know what happened to us, because all the time, that's what I see. Anywhere I go, all the writing is all over the wall, because it looks like we don't even know our story. So I think it's about time we tell our story. Everywhere we go, wherever we be, we should know our stories and tell our own stories. And also because what I learned is these so-called Jewish people always talk about what they've gone through. The movie we just watched, and yesterday, this journalist who was with this black guy in South Africa said he was in Germany, and you remember he went through, you remember what he has gone through. So what I'm saying is, we as Africans, black people, we have gone through a whole lot than these so-called Nazi Germans and everything. So I think every step of our life, we should be telling our story, what we have gone through, because that is the only way that we wouldn't go back again and do those mistakes again. So in our schools, in our homes, in our churches, in our shrines, everywhere we are, in our chop bars, everywhere we are, we have to say our story. We have to recognize and say our story in our taxis, in our trotro, because our story is all over everywhere we go. It's still residing with us now. So we have to put it in mind and say our story. For these people coming back telling us how to tell our story, I think it's enough.
I just want to add, tell our story from an African-centered perspective.
That's right. That's what
because the Ethiopians was telling their story yesterday. You know, they told their story. It wasn't the story we wanted to hear, but they told their story. So we need for you to be at the center of your story.
Yeah.
Your spirituality is at the center of your story. If you're talking about economics, how economics affect you should be at the center of that story.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, great comments. Great comments. But I have a big but there. And my but is this. I mean, you're all correct. We've been doing this 11 years right now. One of the reasons I thought about starting a documentary film festival series is what you've all just said, telling our own story from an Africa-centered perspective. But for some strange reason, I mean, we're doing this at the University of Ghana, we're doing it in Lagos, we're doing it in Cameroon, we're doing it at the University of South Africa, the 3 universities in the West Indies, Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, and we keep encouraging in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in South Africa, in Cameroon, we do workshops along with it. For some strange reason, our people refuse to tell their stories. We call for documentary film submissions. Every year, I get 300, 400 submissions. We go through all of them. Less than 2% come from our own people. Why don't our own people tell the story? We wasted so much money in Cameroon, buying cameras, making sure the students learn to use it to tell the story. We did the same in Nigeria. Now Nigeria is beginning to pick up, right? We do the same in South Africa. We do the same in Jamaica. Everybody holds one of these. This is a 4K. I've seen some even more actually sophisticated than what I'm holding. This would make a movie. This would make a documentary. So why don't you use this to tell our own story? There's at least 4 major film festivals out there that cater to people of African descent. But people just don't submit. People just don't, they don't take it seriously. Nigerians want to do Nollywood. They want to do stupid Nollywood stuff. No, seriously, stupid Nollywood stuff. It's very irritating and it's irking. In the West Indies, everybody wants to make American type movies, action movies, love movies, sex stories. But let's tell our own story. This shoots 4K. Everybody's got this, right? Yes. So why don't you just set about and because doing documentary work is intellectual stuff. You got stories to tell. Start with this. Use this to tell the story. Create the story. Send it to these 4 major festivals. Send it to us. We would show it in serious places. We would make sure if what you need is post-production help, we'd help you do it. But, you know, tell the story. I mean, it's there. You know, it's there. The stories are there. The Cameroonians, I mean, they actually took a lot of our money because we worked with our Alliance Francaise and the Goethe Institute to help the Cameroonians develop a film thing in Cameroon to tell. There were so many stories there. So many stories. At the end, what we got? Nothing. After 5 years, nothing. Was a story every, oh, we're almost done with it. Oh, where's just, oh, I lost the fight. Don't know where I put the camera. You know. So I mean, there's a lot of stories. So start with your cell phones, please. It's right here. That's what I tell my students. Start with this.
You know, I really like what you're saying, and what you're saying is new to me, to my ears. And I really like what you're saying. Now, you know, with me and a camera, I do some little, like, really short videos, like 2 or 3 minutes or whatever, for the project that I'm working on. But I wrote a memoir. That's almost 500 pages. I send that to somebody, right? But my suggestion is, with what you just said, that somewhere in the posting at the beginning of each film and flyers or what have you, some types of steps for people to follow to do that. Because otherwise, somebody like me, if I hear you say what you just said, is the only reason it's going to go in one ear and out the other is not because I don't have a story to tell, and I'm definitely willing to tell it, but the logistics of filmmaking, of making my own documentary, my naivete and lack of experience with that, it's just going to be daunting. And it may turn out to be something simple, but I'm thinking in my head, okay, so I'll just do this, and then I'll do my little videos, and then after that, I have to do like editing.
No,
I have to do.
Forget the post-production. No, forget the post-production.
So my suggestion is to put, you know, like some steps, a link. Go here, do these 4 steps, send it. Good. I guess I don't know.
Okay. If you tell the story with the camera, forget about all the editing, the post-production, call correction, forget all that. If you got a great story with the camera and you put the story, you stick it together, right? All you just got to do is, there's 4 major festivals that do this now. You say, hey, look at what I do with my camera. With my, you know, this is a story that I think it's going to be, you know, it's going to be really riveting. It's a story about, you know, whatever it's about that concerns African people. We have a lot of technical students who would really take your story, your footages, and start cleaning it up, and stitch it together for you, and send it back to you, and say, okay, you know, look at this, you know, because everybody's got a Mac, an Apple. All you need is you need is technical, Final Cut Pro, or Adobe. You know, I mean, you could sit down and actually, I mean, students would edit it, clean it up for you, and send it back to you and say, okay, look, this, you know, maybe you need music here, you need sound to enhance the sound, all that. But basically, the most important thing is that a lot of students, especially in Cameroon, oh, I'm going to the village. My grandmother has all these stories. I've got to take my grandmother quickly. All right, go ahead. You don't see them 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I got to go back to school to teach. I start emailing, what's happening to Donald's story? Oh, he came back, said the camera got stolen in the taxi. Another one. You know? So just give us the footages. You just send the footages and, you know, we'll clean it up, we'll send it back to you. And actually, what could happen with that is somebody who's into documentary filmmaking would say, whoa, this is a great story. I'm going to help you finish it up. You know, but you can still keep your credit as the writer or, you know, but somebody else might say, let me direct this for you. I mean, it's just like pitching stories, right? You know how to pitch stories. You go to, I'm sure Ghana TV does, and you go to Ghana TV and say, hey, I got a great story. This is the story, that's the story. They go, oh, great. All right, we'll take it from here. Well, you get the credit, they'll pay you, and, you know, then they produce it professionally. So what you're just doing is you're pitching a story, or you're pitching a documentary story. Maybe it's about masquerades, maybe it's about a ritual, maybe it's about, you know, rites of passage, you know, a great story. You know, that otherwise it's not, you can't find it anyplace. You know. And you know, I mean, you could do the story and we look at it and go, nah, there's nothing to the story. You know. So I mean, yeah, you run that risk, sure. But if there's
but it's doable though, right? To have
Sure.
like poster boards or something. Step 1, do this, and then step 2, do that, and then step 3, do this.
Filmmaking is not like that.
No, I'm talking about what you just said.
Oh, sure, yeah.
What you just suggested to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because and the reason I'm suggesting that is I'm making the assumption that people are going to have a similar reaction that I've had when I hear you say what you just said, which is, wow, really? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we should do something. And then I think about myself doing it, like Doc said last night, we should say, what can I do about it as opposed to what should we do about it? So then I think, okay, well, I know how to take my phone and do a video, and then after that, what do I do?
Okay.
And then if I say that, you know, I have 8 minutes video or 22-minute video in my phone, then after that, I do what?
I'm sure you send
so
that.
Then,
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So if there's something that says send it to this link and da da da
Okay,
da da da.
we'll put our links where you can send us stuff.
Yeah.
Once you send it, and I mean, there's going to be other questions like follow up. All right, you're telling the story about this. Okay, you need to get X, Y, Z people involved in your documentary. You need to make sure you talk to your grandmother, make sure you talk to your uncle who's down in Mississippi, make sure you talk to your uncle who's no longer in Mississippi and now lives in Ghana. I get them to answer the following questions and send it back. Okay, they do it, they send it back, and then you stitch it together and say, oh, wow, there's a great story here. All right, we need your family album. Let's get footages of your family album. You know, that kind of stuff. And then, you run around, get all what you need to get done, because that's the part in documentary filmmaking that takes time. Going and chasing down your resources, people you want to interview, people you don't want, people you want to appear on camera, people you want to have say something. And then your B-roll. And like, oh, that's happening on what's the mountain in Ghana? Well, in Kumasi or wherever. Okay, go to Kumasi, go get your footage. I mean, we're not gonna come do that for you. You go to Kumasi, you go get the footage of miners doing whatever it is, you send it back. So basically, I mean, that's the B-roll part. That's the part that, that's where you create your pictures in documentary filmmaking. It's, oh my God, wonderful B-roll. Somebody's talking about, you allowing your audience to see what they're talking about. That's the B-roll. So, you have to get the money, travel to where it is, shoot what you need to shoot with your camera, send it back. I mean, one documentary could take you 5 years to make. Seriously. I just finished one that took me 12 years. Well, 10 years.
Okay, so now I'm getting even more confused. So if on the one hand you're making the case, and legitimately so, that this is crazy, why aren't people sending, us this documentary?
Yeah.
We're spending time and money on this, and we're coming up with nothing.
Sure.
Then, now you just said one documentary could take you 5 years, and one you did just made you 10 years.
Sure.
Now, I'm going to just give you some feedback.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at the videos on my phone, I'm like, Charlie.
Okay, all right, then. Okay, then that's it. Well, you got to finish it off. It's like a book.
Because now I'm thinking again as a novice, because you got me excited now. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, well, I got this video in here. I'm going to go home tonight and send it to www.sendittous.com.
Good. So you sent it.
And then I send it, and now somebody's like, it's going to take me 5 years to finish it.
It depends on your story, though. I mean, what's your story?
5 years?
Well, it depends on your story.
I'm doing time and sand.
No. It depends on your story. I mean, it depends on the story. Your story, you can start a story. Okay, I did a story about Otobenga. The African who was, and I just thought, okay, it's going to be easy. I'll just do the story about Otobenga. I'll, do some interviews and then get footages from, you know, the Library of Congress and then St. Louis, Missouri, and then I'll stitch together. But as I sat down and I was looking at the story, I go, oh my God, no, I got to go to Brussels. That's where King Leopold was. That's where he's got that whole mausoleum with Africans in there buried on the ground with their bones and skulls. I got to go shoot that. Well, I can't go now, I'm teaching class a semester. All right, I'll go in December. I get there in December, I start shooting. I see people there at the museum who are experts in King Leopold. I want to interview you. All right, yeah, okay, well, come in February. I can talk to you in February. It begins to drag out. Oh, there's such and such in Oxford. You know, you got to go talk to this guy in Oxford. We'll do that. All right, I can't go right now. I got to save money, go to Oxford. We'll do that. Then suddenly, oh my God, there's a place where he's from in Cameroon, in Congo. And they actually know about Odebenga, this Africans who are there, the Batwa people. Oh, this is not going to be a good documentary if I don't go to the Congo. I'll go at the end of the semester. And I go to Congo. You know, that's how it begins to, you know, you would stop it at any time. You go, okay, that's enough. I just want to do this. And I'm done with 1 year. So it depends on the story you're telling. I've told some stories in 2 months. I just created Block 14. I did in 2-3 months for some PBS. 2-3 months. But other than that, I'm sorry. Yeah, I found out.
Me?
So it depends on your story. Yeah, you could say, oh my God, I found something else. You know, you just keep going.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, I guess based on what has been said now, we also have to be careful, I guess, to make sure we give ourselves enough credit, and also be aware that we don't fall into the trap that those we feel we're not connecting to have fallen into. That's what we feel, that if they fall into a trap. There's no shortage of people telling their own stories. Like, there's no shortage whatsoever, especially using the parameters you're talking about. Facebook, all the social media people put in a few minutes here and there of stories of their own in their own way. And then on top of that, outside of intellectual circuits, there's people who are doing things with no fuss, no anything. Let's make a documentary, anything from 20 minutes to an hour. Then they organize their friends to come around and watch. In Ghana here, there's platforms like Accra.alt, there's the African Film Society. They did a screening at the end of last month. And one of the documentaries, two of the documentaries were ridiculously simple. It was a mother and daughter, Nigerian heritage, discussing, and the girls been grown up in the UK, just discussing their life and language, Yoruba. And then the documentary after that was even simpler. It was a documentary in France, I think, of a Ghanaian in France, and he's a barber, and it was just 15 minutes of possibly just one day, I think it was. And you see a lot about him. He's unfortunately very religious, and it's kind of a sociological thing about a Ghanaian barber in France, religious, and so on. So the point I'm making is there's lots of it. No offense to yourself, but I had no idea who you are. I've been to the screening 2 years in a row, and I actually thought it was just Legon doing it. I didn't realize there's a thing. So if I'm actually in the room watching, and I've got the flyer in my phone, and I don't know about you, then it's very easy.
Oh, no, it doesn't have to do with me.
It's very, or like the organization, whoever's the mother organization, it's very easy that people on the street with their cameras won't know who you are and won't know to contact you. But yeah, still all good points. There's not only do I say that there's no shortage of us telling our stories, but it's a good thing that there's no shortage. But we also need to make sure that we, in the same way they should be searching these platforms out, we need to be searching them out, because a lot of them have no time to promote because of economic reasons and things. So they, like I said, they're messaging their friends, I've got this cinema, I've got this space, come and watch it with me. And then that's sometimes just one or two screenings and that's it, unfortunately. So they have to be searched out the same way that the platforms have to be searched out. Yeah, I made a few notes. I made no notes about...
I'm sorry, man, do you have access to those documentaries or those people?
Yeah,
okay,
you know.
Could you please have?
Well, you can make a note of that.
Please,
Africa Film
well,
Society.
yeah, please, and you know, we'll show them.
Yeah, Accra.
I mean,
Oh, they just literally just put up documentaries
Yeah, so
that
long
they've
as,
made
so
themselves.
long as the broadcast quality will show them 4K, 2K, 1K.
I'm sure most of them will be.
Yeah.
I'm not promising that all of them would be.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but I mean, if they're not, then we could actually help with
So.
quality enhancement,
And actually, there's happening. The Africa Film Society. I don't know how long you're in town.
To stop
It's happening on Saturday at
Oh,
Akola Bonny Park. This very Saturday. They do it monthly,
okay.
end of every month.
Could you send me the email,
Yeah, I
please?
will do.
Please.
Yeah, I made no noise about the Chinese man, the African man trying to be Chinese. But going to the documentary about the South African journalists, I guess it goes without saying probably with this audience that it sort of drove home the point that we have to pick a side. Because of the illusion of inclusion being so smooth now, people think we have the luxury or even the necessity to be apolitical, whatever that means, because I don't think that you can be an artist or a journalist and be apolitical, but let's pretend it's possible. If there really was inclusion, which then we know there isn't, we know we have to pick a side. Because comparing, like they were in South Africa, we can think that, okay, it's okay to now be apolitical and be as European in our thinking as African, but we know that it's just gotten smoother, so it's very necessary for us to also adapt our thinking, but keep in mind that we have picked a side. And then one thing I was disappointed with the South Africa thing was that gender was sort of a subtitle, a footnote. So they sort of referenced it with the female journalist towards the end there. And I feel like it's a real shame that that happens, because when we're talking about these sort of oppressive situations, we always make sure that we talk about the economic results of whatever oppressive situation is. People didn't get access to jobs, people didn't get access to banking, to put the money from their jobs, etc. And then gender will be something at the end, when really I would feel that gender would be higher priority in discussing the fallout from oppression, as the economic results, as the military results, as even the housing, because women, females represent half of our population, and with their oppression, they have got a special set of oppressions that they feel within that oppression. So I think two things happen when we just say, okay, so apart from the money lost, apart from the people who got shot, and then there was the 5 minutes on what happened with the women, it then makes it, because I feel like for those 5 minutes, you connect it to what's happening with you. As I'm saying with the oppression in South Africa, people in Ghana will say, okay, well, that hasn't happened in Ghana for a long time, or maybe they might even delude themselves in thinking it's never happened in Ghana. But then for that 5 minutes when we're talking about gender, we say that, okay, yeah, in Ghana here, women are being sidelined, whatever, in these same kind of ways. So if we put the same priority that we do on the economic fallout, on even the death count, death toll, and the labor results, etc., etc. If we put women along that same priority, I feel like people will be able to empathize with that documentary for a longer period of time, instead of sort of that's something that happened over there, a very unique set of circumstances, and so on. I made a few other points, but I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much for today's series of documentaries we watched. Dr. Kambon, I just want to ask how you felt, especially watching the black Bruce Lee guy and how he was so enthused about trying to fly, and the idea of how we have to promote our own. I mean, I don't know whether he knows of capoeira, and how important that is, and how powerful that is as compared to, is it wushu? Yeah, wushu. Chinese wushu. It brings me back to what John Henry Clark said. He says that a people that reject their ancestral heritage will be ignored by their offsprings. So what you do to your ancestors, your offspring will do to you. You see, there is this, it's really painful and sad how we try to imitate other people's culture to the neglecting of our own culture. There is this program running in Ghana now known as IYF, International Youth Forum, and you see South Koreans singing Ghanaian songs. If I had my own way, I would scrap that program off. You see, Ghanaian students, when it's time for that program, we call students from JHS and SHS, and the program happens here, right on the campus of the University of Ghana. And students will leave everything. They usually organize it when school is on vacation, and children will move heaven on earth to be on that program. What baffles me and what worries me is they have a night where these South Koreans will sing Ghanaian songs, true songs, as though they were indigents of the country. So nothing comes into the leaders or the organizers of that program to also allow, if it's supposed to be a cultural exchange program, why don't we, because I know Ngugi wa Thiong'o said that if you know your language, in addition to somebody's language, it is empowerment. But if you know somebody's language, then it's of yours, it is enslavement.
Thank you.
So why don't you allow, because if it is about being a global citizen, then Ghanaian citizens should also be allowed or know the language of the South Koreans. Well, it is not even supposed to be, it's a halfway thing. They sing our songs, we don't know a word of their language. And so we come and sit here and partake in all the activities, and we go back blockheaded, and they would have sung our song for us as if they wrote the songs. So I mean, watching this African born bred man trying to imitate Chinese Bruce Lee because he's watched that on telly, it's really disturbing. And so I just want to, I was just imagining how Dr. Kambon will be feeling in his skin. Okay, because we know how important we have our own martial arts. I mean, we have our form of defense that's more powerful kicks than sort of martial arts. So this is my contribution, and I'd want to know how you were feeling when that was going on. Thank you.
Yeah, before Dr. Kambon jumps in, I would want to say that we shouldn't judge him too much because we all do it to an extent. I think for him, his one is exaggerated and like a magnifying glass. He's like a caricature of trying to copy the West. But one way or another, we're all guilty of it, you know what I mean? So his one was that, it's very zoomed in, his obsession with it, but in some way or another, we are aspiring to the outside and something that is better to leaving behind our own thing. But yeah, I'll leave it.
And before you say anything, it's interesting that you said the kick because they did a test and they found out that the capoeira kick was the hardest and most powerful kick out of all of the arts.
Yeah. Well, I'm a doctor. I've also basically come to understand that I'm also a dentist. Because trying to get African people to be interested in African things is like pulling teeth. Even with the capoeira, as I look around, now I came to one class, finish. Now, did you ever come to any class?
Twice.
You came twice. Bonchi, you came once. Bonchi, you came once or twice.
3 times.
Was it 3 times?
Yeah, I did more than 3. Like 4.
Are you sure?
So it's bullshit who doesn't want.
His point is
So trying to get African people to do African things is oftentimes like pulling teeth, even to get people to come to the film festival. If you look around, how many of our African Studies fellows are here? I sent an email, I was mentioning this to you yesterday, I sent an email out to every single student and every single faculty, staff on the entire campus about the Medu Neter study group, free, open to the community. The only call that I got was from a South Korean. And he said, oh, and I have another friend who's also South Korean who wants to learn. I have to learn this. He followed up to knock on my door. Yes, I'm the one, yes. I want, are you sure? Is it going to happen? So meanwhile, all of my African students who they know that this is the oldest language. They know that if you want to know anything about history, astronomy, any subject in the world, you have to go there to read it yourself. But I have 0 of my students who come from African studies who come to that study group over time. Yeah, you know, similarly, so I mentioned the capoeira, I mentioned, you know, this one. So, you know, I'm a dentist. I'm pulling teeth, trying to get African people to use Abibi Tumi as opposed to Facebook. You're talking about, oh yeah, we tell our stories on Facebook. We have our own African social media. But to get African people to use something African is like, I don't even know what it's like. I don't know if there's anything that difficult. Splitting atoms with my teeth would probably be easier. But I wanted to bring up, I have a former capoeira student who's actually from Gabon named Chinga Mikolo. Interestingly, when I first met him, he was calling himself Kevin. He saw how I was dressed. Next time I saw him, he said, I want to call myself Chinga. I don't want to use Kevin again. He started just transforming himself. We like weren't even having too many conversations about these things. He said, I want to make t-shirts that say Kemet. So, you know, he's back in Gabon. He wants to bring me down there to introduce it. So Gabon was part of the ancient kingdom of Congo. So when you're talking about capoeira, it's coming from this ancient kingdom of Congo, including Gabon. They just chopped it up into different parts, Congo Brazza, Congo Kinshasa, Angola. So for him to go back to the capoeira is actually, you know, his own, you know, heritage. So he's trying to make that something that's stronger there. But he is now drafted as a dentist in Congo and Gabon and all these places, because the people there, they want to know about wushu.
They want to fly.
They want to fly. Just like you're saying, he's going back there to teach all of these people about wushu. You understand? So it's an interesting situation. You brought up Ethiopia as well. I had one of my students from Yoruba and Chi, when I was in Chicago, he repatriated to Ethiopia sight unseen. He was there and he was very disillusioned because he said these people aren't African. Not necessarily in the sense of genotype and phenotype, but in the sense of allegiance, 0 allegiance to other black people, you know, in the world, 0 allegiance. And this is one of the things that comes out across the board, that regardless of your genotype or your phenotype, because of all of these other things, allegiance to being black, allegiance to being African tends to be, you know, very low. So, you know, he left Ethiopia very disillusioned again, because people would look at him and say, you're not Habesha, you're not, you know, this, we came from this, we came from that. So that was a very interesting thing. And I also wanted to bring up the paper that myself and you are working on, Nana Yao, on a 3-continent analysis, looking at the US, South Africa, and India, and how all 3 of those places in the past and currently are subject to genocide, using the UN's definition of genocide, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, bringing about conditions to bring about the destruction of that group in whole or in part, preventing births in the group, and then also transferring children of the group. So basically showing that this was the case in the US for every single one of those criteria. This was the case in South Africa for every single one of those criteria. This is the case in India among the Dalits, the blacks there in India, for every single one of those criteria. But here in the documentary, just as always, they say the problem is apartheid, which is that you're not close enough to these white people. In the US, you know, the problem is, oh, you're not integrated. So now the people who are committing genocide against you, if you just get closer to them, then your problems are solved. Then in India, the problem is untouchability, so we'll let you touch us, so then your problems are solved. So if your issue is genocide, it can never be resolved by coming into closer proximity to your enemies who are committing genocide against you. So they have an apartheid museum, they don't have a genocide museum. You understand? You had the We Charge Genocide Tomorrow. I'm speaking about Du Bois and the human rights struggle in the US, and framing it in terms of, you know, this continued genocide against black people, African people throughout the world. So these are things that we have to question when they frame it as the problem is apartheid, and everybody does this. And then also look at how your enemies are their heroes, and your heroes are their enemies. because in each one of those three cases, in the U.S., that image that they show of integration is Martin Luther King. They say, this is your hero. You don't hear so much about Malcolm X. You definitely don't hear so much about, you know, Marcus Garvey. You don't hear so much about Nat Turner. Those are like, I'm starting to list my heroes. If I start listing my heroes, you're gonna be like, he got some interesting heroes. You know, in South Africa, that image that they put up for us is Nelson Mandela.
No, Robert Sobukwe.
No, Mangaliso
In the
Sobukwe.
document, the guy had Nelson Mandela's book
Right.
when he was being interviewed.
Yeah.
You saw Mandela.
I saw that. And then finally, I want to land on this point. I'll come to you. I just want to land on this point. And then in India, that image of against untouchability is Gandhi, who we have a statue of right here on campus. But very rarely do you hear about Baba Saheb Ambedkar. I even say that, people say, what is that? Did you sneeze or cough? Right? So these are the things that when we choose our own heroes, these are the ones who are fighting for African liberation. When your enemies choose your heroes for you and define your terms for you, they will turn you, as Mfundisi says, backwards, upside down, inside out. Dr. Kanida?
You know, this is, I think about the guy, the Bruce Lee guy, and I remember coming up and my mother taking us to see Five Fingers of Death and Enter the Dragon, and you know, it was the business. And then Godzilla came out, and you know, and I'm still like, you know, I don't know what I do with my Godzilla stuffed animal, but you know, when it comes to monsters, Godzilla's my dude. You know, I've not seen any African monsters yet, but you know, they invent a 30-foot, you know, a 200-foot animal, you know, monster thing. I might be able to, you know, switch shoes. But anyway, my point is, so here's where this thing gets a little bit weird, right? Because, so we look at this dude and we're like, okay, well that's this one guy and he's an anomaly, he's an outlier, so let him go and do his thing. And so we do that, and then as I go upstairs to get a bottle of water, and I'm listening to all of these folks standing around speaking tree, I step on something. And as I step back to see what I step on, it's a piece of trash wadded up on the ground. And I step back and I look and I see some other pieces and other pieces. And as I'm making my way back to come back down in here, what I'm thinking is, so we're at a university and we're speaking tree and we're throwing trash on the floor. I think I would rather speak English and not throw trash on the floor at my university than speak tree and throw trash on the floor. Not that that's a choice, of course. But as I'm thinking about the movies that we're seeing and, you know, some of the conversations we're having, and this takes us back to, so what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about that? I'm looking at this guy walking in some of these Asian cities. Not to say that all of Asia and India and everything is just immaculate clean, but I'm looking at him walking along and I'm kind of hating a little bit. Because I'm like, you know, we're not only just throwing stuff inside the university on the ground. And at one point, they locked the restroom because how people were treating the toilets was so nasty. They're just like, we just gonna lock the restrooms. And I'm like, well, there's no Germans here making you do that.
No.
And, you know, ain't no Russians here, you know, holding a gun to your head making you do that. And there's no howitzers aimed at us making us do that. So now what's our story on that one? Inside a university with people speaking tree. So what's really going on? You know what I'm saying? So it gets really, I guess, nuanced when it comes to these kinds of things. And then going back to the logistical information, you know, about getting in there and getting these movies, getting it set up, or else, like you're saying, just go to these sites and just go, you know, do your fishing there. Not P-H-I-S-H, but, you know, F-I-S-H, and getting it on there. So that's all cool and good. But then, you know what, now that's making me want to see a documentary about something like that. About a bunch of semi-conscious, Pan-African-ish sort of tree-speaking people at a university who don't know how to flush toilets and who throw trash on the ground.
Make one.
You know?
Make one.
And Charlie, 5 years old?
You can make it. Seriously, you know what? I mean, it depends on
You
how
might
far
be
you go.
surprised. You might be surprised one day to see me making one. And
Yeah, no,
everybody
no,
in here gonna be
no,
mad.
come on.
But that's okay. That's okay. And that'll be the name of it. Everybody gonna be mad. But anyhow.
Thank
But you
God.
know, I mean, when we start talking about dress African, eat African, this, and this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I like Godzilla, but I ain't throwing trash on the floor. You know, I got some issues with that. And what it does is it makes me wonder because when we go back and we look at the school, there's a scene in the South African school where one of the backs of the red chair is all busted and broken, and they're just getting in it and sitting in it. And so I'm thinking, so nobody's mama and daddy know how to nail some wood and stuff together and just make a wood chair and replace it? We just gonna keep sitting in a broken chair? And we're just like, got all these great statistics and we're learning all this stuff, and don't nobody know how to fix the chair? Don't nobody know how to put some risers in there to come up a little bit to accommodate space so that the children are sitting on bricks? I don't know, it's just, you know what I'm saying? So, but that same dynamic is happening here, and who do we blame that one on? The Koreans? So, I don't know, it's kind of got me feeling a certain way when I went upstairs to get some water, and now I'm stepping on trash on the floor in the University of Ghana, in Ghana.
Did you pick up the trash?
No, I didn't. I was pissed off. No, I'm serious. No, because that's a beautiful question.
Right there.
That's a
That
beautiful
was my
question.
first, as soon as you were saying that.
That was a beautiful
when I see
question.
trash around, I'll pick it up.
Yeah, that was a beautiful question, and I didn't pick it up out of outrage. I'm like, God damn it, I'm not. You know,
Yeah.
Talking about
Yeah, from
what happened upstairs today, or you are
Just in general.
talking about a general observation.
No, this
you made?
evening when I went to get some water while the movie was playing.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
those who came out there are politicians. You know how politicians are.
I got you.
Well, one thing I'll say,
Okay.
I'll come to you, but one thing I'll
Because
say.
on campus, you see a lot of trash cans, so I don't know to what extent that problem is dealt with on campus, littering on campus, because there are enough, well, I guess, some trash cans to control that. But, you know, those who came out there, yeah, they left a lot of mess. I just met the facility manager and he's complaining. But young politicians, they are just as good up as the senior politicians.
Yeah, again.
I wouldn't limit it to politicians. I'll say this and now y'all can
Okay.
that last week I have a class called Foundations of African Thought.
Yeah.
And we were going over, and then earlier in the week I had a talk on the radio about how the equal sign will kill our people. Just in terms of when we equate African concepts to Eurasian concepts, what often happens is our concept gets obliterated. So for example, if I say Arade to people, I'm using a tree word, but for many people the concept is completely obliterated. So Arade is the feminine aspect of the creator, and Nyakopon is a masculine aspect. Now if I ask any native tree speaker, especially here in Accra, what is Arade, they'll point to the picture of white Jesus and say that's Arade.
That's right. That's right.
That I actually shed tears when I was here for undergrad. I did my junior year of study abroad here, and actually thought that in the tree language you couldn't possibly say all of the insane things that you could say in English, because I knew what I was saying English was. And then on the bus ride from Kumasi back to Accra, a preacher came on talking about all manner of insanity entirely, you know, in Chi. So the language, the words they're using, African words, however the entire concept, the entire worldview is completely, let me not say completely, is very much perverted and twisted. So even as you go around here, you'll think, oh, well, they're speaking Chi, but what are they actually saying? What is the content of what they're saying? They're using the language in order to say all of the miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education that they have. I hope you're following. So basically just saying that to say, you can't take it like, okay, they're speaking tree, therefore they must be conscious. Zero. No.
Oh, no, yeah, I wasn't saying that. Yeah.
Right. So, and then also being here in African Studies, I can attest that the level of consciousness is not what I would like to see, you know, in any way, shape, or form. When I came here, you know, you'll read books like African people are communalistic and whatever. I came here, you got to bring your own toilet tissue. They're using this neon green soap where I had to come and for months provide my own black soap. And as I was bringing the black soap, people were using it, but nobody was coming to bring black soap, you know, to replenish. So I kept doing, and then eventually I said, you know, that's when Mama Z left, and I said I can't keep using her black soap because she's gone now. So I got the little bit of black soap that I got left in my room. So if I gotta wash my hands, I'm gonna take. But you know, these things, as you're saying, it gets quite frustrating. Now, again, I don't think it's an either or thing that if you speak Chi, then it's this, and if you speak English, then it's that. And so I would say, you know, I would be cautious with that type of thing, because the idea is that we're supposed to be striving for an ideal. I would like to be speaking in an African language and also thinking African thoughts. That's the whole idea about Bibi Tumi Kasa, Black Power language, because I realize that there's nothing, no discourse in Tree about anything dealing with African liberation. There's zero discourse in Tree about Black Power. There's zero discourse in Tree about any of these things that we think are quite intelligent to be talking about. So I said we have to create that discourse. Now I could have just been sitting back in English and say, well, John Henry Clark was speaking English and Dr. Ben was speaking English, so let me just keep speaking English. But it comes to the idea, do you honor a warrior more by picking up their gun or by sitting beside them and say, what a good job you did? If this person took a machete and cut a path, do I say, all right, they've got as far as they could get, let me pick up the machete and keep carving on that path in the direction? Or do I just keep standing in their footsteps and saying, look at what this great job they did? Oftentimes, that's what we do, is the latter. We say, all right, this is what they did, so I'm going to keep doing the same thing. And I think that that actually does quite a disservice to them, because they were trying to get us to a point. They didn't get there. It's like in the end of Sankofa, she said, I may not get there with you, sister, but keep on running, right? This is the idea. We're supposed to be striving to move further. We're supposed to be striving with the Chi, with the Medu Neter, because in Medu Neter there are some liberation concepts, but I was like, Kemetiu Mhat, black people in the front. This is like race first, but it's like using Medu Neter to describe this thing, because if you come across this thing and it's not doing what you want to do, you were talking yesterday about seeing how we're able to shape the English language. All right, that's cool. Is that what we want our grandchildren be doing? Do I want my great-grandchildren to say, look at what I'm doing with the English language? That's not me personally what I would like to see them doing. So I'm going to take it as far as I can take it. And if they want to honor me, right, it's like you were saying, those who reject their ancestors, what Nana was saying, those who reject their ancestors are rejected. I would like, they're not honoring me if they do the same thing that I'm doing, right? They should take it light years beyond what I can even conceive of them doing. But oftentimes, you know, and I'm not saying you, but oftentimes we get complacent and we want to be comfortable. We want to say, you know, they're not doing so great, so what I'm doing is cool. And, you know, again, I would like to encourage all of us to strive. Dr. Asa Hilliard shared this concept that was quite profound to me. He came to speak at NC State, and it basically went to the core of what a human being is. So if you look at Eurasian languages, when they say I'm human, the idea is that I'm fallible, I make mistakes, I'm bad, original sin, alienation, all these things. They say I'm only human. But he was saying the African concept, when they say Oyinipa, you're saying this person is kind, generous, truthful, like all of these concepts. And he was using the concept Mira, to be like the sun. And the idea is that everyone should strive towards perfection, to be like the sun. You understand? And I always held on to that. It's like, all right, it's not that I'm done. At no point are we done. But we should always strive for perfection if we're talking about being African. If we start just getting complacent and like, let's chill out in the cesspool, then that's where we're going to be. But if we say we should strive to be like the sun, it's a whole different level of thinking. But then it comes up to what happens when you interact with people who have the concept that to be human is to make mistakes and to jack stuff up and whatever, that there's going to be a clash of worldviews to some degree. Now you can either keep trying to be like the sun, or you can say, all right, let me do what they're doing. But these are some of the questions that we grapple with. What do people who are striving to be African, how do they interact with people who aren't so much into it, whether it's throwing trash or whether it's whatever? So just different thoughts.
I was trying to say something later back. Because with the debt and all these garlic and all these debt in Accra and other places, I mean, almost the whole Ghana. When I was growing up, Ghana wasn't like that. Because the more we're losing our language and our culture, that's bringing all these craziness and this madness to us. Because when I was growing up, even though we were backward, but we weren't that backward like that. Yeah, we're inside out. We're going down, but we're not that down like that. Because I always talk about it. So today I was talking to my sister, and she's coming to where I live. Because if I tell people where I live, they don't believe it. I'm from Chocochemwena. I was growing up there. People who know Accra, they like, that place is like low level. Yeah, but you know, far way down, Chocochemwena. Yeah. Because when I was growing up, that place wasn't like that. There used to be, there's a lagoon there going to the sea. So there used to be, what do you call it, sometimes there used to be a helicopter that sprays, like, what do you call it, something to, like, they come and clean the, what do you call it, the lagoon, the weed, that place. So there was no mosquitoes. There was no mosquitoes. That place was neat and nice. I mean, when we were growing up, this is called tankers. So there's a time, this sanitation people, but we used to call them in the Ghana language, they would say tankers in Bai. So when they say tankers in Bai, that means the sanitation man is coming for inspection. And everybody runs. I'm not in order. You're like, come on, I gotta put things in order. But we lose all those things. So today I was talking to my sister. She's coming and I was talking to her. There are some things that we need to do. So I was talking to her and she was telling me that, oh no, I'm not going to do it, but I got to be in a hotel. And I said, okay, good for you. I'm not being in a hotel because I can spend that money in the hotel whilst I get some money to spend in the house. So it's your choice. But I'd rather spend that money in the house and put things in order than to go to the hotel. Because at the end of the day, your dad is there, your mom is there. So that's how people think. See, because the way you think, you are your environment. See, you are your environment. And I always talk to people, they say, oh, the government are buying. Who they are buying? Oh, you are the government. See, because so you got to take your place serious. See, your environment, nobody, you got to, I mean, charity begins at home and you have to brighten the corner where you are. I believe in that. So in this my time, I said, any good thing that I can do to change, like you said, to change my generation, because I don't want my children, my two girls to grow in this situation. I want them to move forward and do something greater. So, in watching all these movies and coming together and being African and being a typical indigenous Ghanaian, I'm so proud and I continue to join this family and we should move forward. And now, it's good, we complain, we talk, but now it's time to do the doing. So we have to do all the good things that we can do because people are watching us. The good things that you do, you think people are not watching you, but people are watching you. So any good thing that you do, people will do and then they will watch what you're doing and then we'll change things. Because we will do it, nobody will do it for us. We got to change, so I think we are in the process, so we shouldn't give up. We should continue with the process and then we'll change because I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, so we should keep going.
I don't think that people really are feeling, it's almost like they're numb, like they don't feel that we're in a state of emergency with almost everything. Right, that we're at a state of emergency with our language, with what we eat, especially the trash. Like coming to Ghana, I did not expect at all the amount of trash. And this is how naive I was. I was thinking, okay, they accepted Jesus, that's gonna be a lot of work. But if it says cleanliness is godliness, and right in front of the church, around the church, in the back of the church is trash, I'm wondering, why is it that the people that go to the church never said, hey, let's just do just this one section, maybe it'll catch on. like I was thinking, like, you know, that they would be thinking in that manner, because everybody wants to do an action and they're already angry at either they're becoming conscious and they're finding out that Jesus didn't exist or none of the people in the Bible existed and things like that, but they still go to church. Well, if you're still going to go to church and you want to have an action and you have access to people yet you don't even have to go search for, how about number one, clean up Ghana? That is going to be the money maker for Ghana. It's almost like they're waiting for the same people that wants to kill them, like the European and the Asian and the Arab, to come and clean up the mess. And when they come and clean up the mess, the people are going with it. You know?
I wanted to share something again. This came up in the class Foundations of African Thought, where we were talking about concepts of the human being, and going back to like some of the fossils that were found. We brought up, you know, Homo 1 and Homo 2. Previously, those were the oldest modern human fossils. That's 195,000 years ago. But last year they found fossils in what's now Morocco, because of course the Sahara Desert goes from lush green back to desert, tilting on the axis of the earth. And that was dated to 300,000 years ago. And when I was in Ethiopia, I saw Dinknesh, which dates to 3.5 million years ago. Older than that, Ardipithecus, 4 million years ago. Basically what I'm getting at is, if we start our count conservatively at 4 million years, the rivers were clean for 4 million years.
Thank you.
The trees, you had sacred groves, you can't go in there. You can't fish on these days. Preservation of this, of that, of this. So 4 million years unbroken all the way up to around 50 years ago. Because there are people who are old enough to remember the Kole Lagoon that you could drink out of it. People tell me that I can't even conceive of it, because if your pinky goes into the Kole Lagoon right now, you better cut off your pinky. Because it was revered as a divinity. You understand? So sometimes, especially coming from the diaspora, we'll come thinking that if I come to Africa, I will meet African people. However, oftentimes we may come here and we may meet anti-African people, people who have been taught to be anti-African in every single thing that they do. And these things that we're talking about are just them trying to be consistent. So I'm trying to wear white clothes because I want to be fully anti-African. I want to speak a white language because I want to be, so they're trying to be consistent in everything, what I project outside and what's internal. So we're coming here, my father often says the similar thing, that how do you go from living with nature and all these proverbs about animals and birds that nobody here has ever seen before, to the place where if you go in South Africa, Southeastern Africa, they will take a chainsaw and cut the face off of a rhino and leave the rest of it. They will go and cut the face off of an elephant and just leave it. These are people who were eating out of the same bowl, people who were saying only kill the one that's elderly or whatever. They had this concept for 4 million years, and then within the last 50 to 100 years, depending on the place, all of that has been obliterated. So then the question becomes, one, this is not natural, this is not nature. But then the question becomes, what happened? If it's nurture, quote unquote, what happened? And what I put forth in the class is that what Eurasians, when you talk about the two cradle theory, northern cradle and southern cradle, that the northern cradle was talking about, and then this is also in the instructions of Mary Carré, Keti to Mary Carré, where it talks about the environment being short of resources, that's why they behave the way they behave. That's what Sekhan the joke basically was saying as well. Now, if I look at that, from there they got the concepts of only the strong survive, might makes right, survival of the fittest. That's their own proverbs. They're telling you that if you're in a place with no resources, then you become like the rat in the Skinner box. All y'all are dumped in. You can predict the minute that the fight is going to happen. Whereas the one that has lots of resources, there's no issue. But basically what Eurasians have been doing, because I don't disambiguate the Europeans from the Arabs, from the Chinese, from whatever, they're all Eurasians. Eurasia is one landmass. And vis-a-vis African people, they have one policy with regard to us. that basically what they're doing is they're making everybody suffer, specifically Africans suffer what they went through a fake imaginary resource that you don't have enough of, which is money. Because if you don't have enough money, now you got to cut the face off to go get ivory so you can go get some money. You would have to be skilled to die of starvation in Africa, because I can go and pluck a mango from my front yard. But if I can convince African people that you don't have enough of something, and then you can trigger off this Eurasian mentality of, if I don't have enough resources, then I got to be like the plane that crashed in the Andes Mountains. We got to start eating each other, right? So just to put some of these things in perspective and to make us think about some of these things, and if we understand this major change has happened, 4 million years unbroken to 50 to 100 years, the people who are upstairs, I would never call them African. I stopped calling any continental African that I meet African. That the things that you're talking about, there has to be a criteria, a evaluative criteria and organizing principles before I would say this is an African. Because I need to, if I meet you, I need to know, are you African or are you anti-African? Right? I can't just look at you. What's your genotype, phenotype? That can be the baseline. But then what's your allegiance? What's your behavior? Right? So just.
And even what you said, like about the animals and things like that, and them actually being a higher being, and that the Bible literally flipped it, like humans are above animals, and like how some of the animals are even acting and are still continuing more and better than we are, like the elephant. Still today, when the eldest elephant passes away, and the bones have been left there after all of the meat is gone, the elephants go back and lift the bones up in the air. Who taught them how to do that? Who taught them how to honor their ancestors? And they still do it today, even though they are savagely being destroyed. But humans, we're just so fragile that we can just have somebody just come in and just say whatever. Take the land, take our clothes, take the language, take everything. And even like today, I mean, and it's everywhere. It's not just in, here in Africa. It's even in America. Today I read that 80% of Atlanta, including the men that are married, are gay. 80% of Atlanta. Just, you know, it's like they showed, it's like the...
So 80% of the black men?
We've adopted
the
yes.
No, that's common. Everybody knows that.
Yes, but it's just that, you know, it was shown, it wasn't something that was historically happening with us. You know, it was basically thrown upon us. We were invaded and things like that. And that we think it's okay, or that there's nobody's, it's like, what are the solutions to help with that situation? Because even if every gay man today just stopped being gay, how are the women going to take that? If a man told me he was gay,
yeah, well, a lot of the women
you can best believe the black female would be like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Yeah. So even if after eradicating all of the things that are happening, gay and this and that and all of this domination and invasion and things like that, there still has to be a time of psychological and physical healing that still needs to happen. And that if black people, African people, or Africans in America do not think it's an emergency, this class will never fill. And it is an emergency right now.
It is. And one thing I'll say to tie into that as well, because we're talking about the integration, one thing my father often says is that integration, as well as television or whatever, is set up to give them greater access. Mm-hmm. So we're saying what happened 4 million years were African. Right? So just even in terms of just on the basic level of we can drink water, that's not to say everything was wonderful, but this is a basic thing that my children will come back. Me, myself, I will reincarnate and I need to drink this water, so let me not urinate in it. You understand? That as a basic, type of deal, that's not here anymore. And, thinking about that as well in terms of when they get greater access, Like, I haven't seen, nor am I going to see Black Panther. Sacrilege. But I've never seen The Matrix. Sacrilege. That's like the new Bible. Everything, oh, that's just like, because what that does is that allows Eurasians to shape the narrative of how I see the world. My sister saw it, then she started saying, we were having a conversation, she was like, oh, this is just like in the Black Panther. You understand? She's like, oh, that was a theme that was covered in the Black Panther. And, you know, all of these things are to get their ideas into your head. Now you start to shape the entire world. You start to explain everything based on what they allow you to see. And they ain't let nothing come out in the movie, I'm sure, that leads to a reversal of white on top, black on the bottom. I don't know. Even if it did, who are you financing? You give the money to Marvel and Disney. Disney, a notorious history of anti-African racism. They're going to flip those billions that black people give to them in order to build a new prison. And then you're going to march with placards, and you bought the board for the placard from Walmart and the pen from it from Walmart too. And they're going to flip that money back to buy a bullet, to buy a bomb that they're going to drop on Africa. You understand? So these are the things that, as we're talking about re-Africanization and de-whitenization, and both of those need to happen on the continent, both of those need to happen in the diaspora. I stopped assuming that any continental African is going to be more African than someone from the diaspora. No, not necessarily. And usually it may not be, you know, the case right off the bat, but these are some of the things for us to think about, you know, in terms of who do we support and why. That's right. What are the repercussions of that, you know, support, especially in the area of finance, and then also psychologically and so forth.
But I think herein is where we begin to lose ground in terms of strategy and being purposeful and strategic in our approach to, you know, we first of all have to define what it is we're trying to do. Are we trying to save black people? Are we trying to enlighten black people? Are we trying to protect black people? I think we have to have the we being the forerunners, the leaders, the movers and shakers, the pillars. What is it that we're trying to do in the first place? I don't give a damn whether somebody watches Black Panther or not. I really don't. For me personally, I'm stronger than a movie, me watching a movie. I'm more concerned about black men not molesting their children. I'm more concerned about people throwing trash on the ground inside the university and not knowing how to flush toilets. I'm more concerned about not having to drive through Medina in the middle of the day and see a man in the median urinating. I'm more concerned about those kinds of things and people having sound fiscal affairs and being strategic and logistical in bolstering our education systems than I am in whether or not somebody went to what their choice of entertainment is. I've been a huge werewolf and vampire fan for a long time. It's just something that's fascinating to me as far as the special effects are concerned and that particular narrative. But for me to suggest, and this isn't me being defensive, this is just my journey, my reality. When I introspect and I take a look at that and I look at the impact of vampires and werewolves on Carnita in Ghana, I can't make any kind of tie-in to say, yeah, every time I watch those movies, it makes me not want to speak tree. You know, every time I see those movies, it makes me want to bounce a check. Every time I see those movies, it makes me want to earn a C- instead of an A+. We got to have some kind of sense of strategy and who this is for. Even when you're teaching the meta class and you're making the case for this is a priestly language and a system that they wrote, and there's 5 different types. Okay, so then are we all going to be priests? Are we all, you know, going to begin to speak this language and all the other umpteen zillion African languages are going to go out the window? We got to have a good strategy for this. We got to have some type of organized, unified front, and then we can't be afraid of things like roller coasters. We can't be afraid of water parks. We can't be afraid of movie theaters to suggest that we're powerful, we're badasses, wait, but if we see this movie, it's going to mess us up psychologically. At some point, it's like, well, really? So I think that there needs to be, all said and done, there really does need, I mean, in terms of documentary, I think a fabulous movie to play in one of these film festivals one of these times would be these fuckboys that are running around here telling all these older women that they love them and getting their family members to collude with them, that they want to marry them, only to get a one-way ticket to America. Boom! Let's do a movie on that. Exactly.
You got your phone?
Right. So that, you know, and it's an epidemic. It's a pandemic. So, okay. And so my thing is, as I'm listening to you guys and I'm hearing what you're saying, and then we start pulling, and then they do this, and then we do this, and then they had a Hershey bar, and then they did this, and then, okay, but what's our strategy? What's the game plan? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be a part of a cult either. I don't want to be a part of a movement where you're not African because you had a piece of pork rib, and you're not African because you ate scrambled eggs, and you're not African because you're not a raw foodist. That's how you become a cult. So what's our strategy? What's the game plan? And I think that's what needs to be clarified. And that's what I was asking from this brother here when he was making the very legitimate case and sharing knowledge that I certainly didn't know, other people didn't know about some of his frustrations with documentaries and stuff. And this is really important that we do this. Okay, well then give me some logistical framework to work with. And then in the same way, that's what's happening here, right? As we're making this case, Doc, you walk with a big stick. You know, you have a huge influence on people. People are looking at your YouTube videos. People are looking at your YouTube videos. I came across one a few weeks ago. This is a big impact when you get that kind of a thing to where you can look down and see how many people are watching these videos. So with that type of presence, I think the onus is on you to have some type of unified effort. We get it from Dr. Claude Anderson. We see what his thing is. We get it from Boyce Watkins. We see what his thing is. We get it from Derek Jackson. We see what his thing is. And I think that you guys have to fashion something similar so that as you're saying these things, it kind of ties in and it works. Otherwise, it's like, well, damn, can I pick up a comic book? Is that, no? How about if I wear some socks? No? Okay. It begins to border on the line of almost like being cultish. And again, at the end of the day, this is the motion picture industry in whatever country we're talking about. And it is not first and foremost a tool for enlightenment and education. It's just entertainment. A lot of this stuff that comes across the screen is profound, I'll admit that. But a lot of it is also just sheer entertainment. It's fictitious, it's just for people to just, oh my God, oh this, oh aha, and then that's it, end of story. I saw somebody in the theater with a Black Panther hat on, right? Maybe that dude is gonna be one of the greatest Pan-Africanists we ever did see, but he was just kind of in it and in the moment. And I don't wanna police people like that. I don't wanna start policing people and choreographing their reality like that. And I love the things that you're saying, I love the things that you're saying, I love the things that you're saying, because it helps, it's helpful. But I think that we have to have an organized, strategic effort. Otherwise, it'll sound too much like we're getting ready to create a cult. And that's definitely going to have me feeling a certain kind of way.
Yeah, I just want to add to what she said. It's all about how we're going to keep this together. Because I come here, I get inspired, I get to know myself, what my ancestors represent. And I go home 2 days later, and the fame and everything that I came to experience here, everything is gone. So how we are going to keep this going? Because a lot of people are outside there, they don't have any knowledge about this. They are so ignorant. Now people see me as I'm atheist or something. Last time I was talking to my sister, I told my sister, oh, I don't think if I still believe in the Bible right now. And what she said was, you are not from my mother's womb. Yes.
So was it free to ask you whether there was a Bible in your mother's womb?
Seriously, no. Now we don't even talk as we used to. Because almost every day we call each other, we talk as so much to the extent that
in my house I'm also an outcast.
You see, I'm not from my mother's womb. So that means I'm different now. So it's like I come here, get inspired, I get to know myself as an African.
Maybe we should create a group of
there have to be some consistency. So I think now email is okay, but not everyone check their email as we Ghanaians or African people, we don't check our emails just like very often. But everyone uses WhatsApp right now. We need to form some groups, and each and every day should be sending messages, and all of these things we can be reading, and it should just be consistent. So we get to know more, read more, all of these things. Because a lot of us, we are new, we don't know how to go along with it and all these things. You see, and we really, really want to know more about Africa, ourselves, what our ancestors should present, what we must also represent.
I know Dr. Carnita has a WhatsApp group. She can probably add you there. I would also recommend abibitumi.com, which is an African-owned social media. So we have all the white-owned social medias. There are also African-owned ones where it's entirely African. You know, now to some of the things that you were saying, Dr. Carnita, that I had a couple of thoughts. One is just in terms of, you know, we talk about some of us being on the forefront, or you know, these types of things. Sometimes the terminology is conscious, or so forth and so on. And one thing I always pose, you know, to students or whoever, is that, all right, here you have somebody who's read 1,000 books. Here's somebody who's read 0 books, and they're both doing the exact same thing. Their behavior is the exact same. What's the point of reading 1,000 books and calling yourself conscious and, you know, pretending to be on the forefront, and you're doing all of the same behaviors as people who haven't read anything or haven't heard the lectures of this? So basically just, you know, putting the impetus on some of us, and of course not everyone, because they're, again, I'm a dentist and people don't like to have their teeth pulled, but just the impetus of what behavioral change is going to happen once you read about ancient Kemet. What behavioral change? These are some of the things that you're saying as well, that there should be, like, for me, I don't litter. I will, if I got a sachet, I will put it in my pocket and wait till I get home. I don't litter. And that comes as a direct result of, you know, some whatever level of consciousness. As soon as I read the book, I'm thinking I should no longer do this. I should start doing this. It's a personal choice, you understand? And of course, you're not going to influence everybody else to do that, because most people will not be influenced when you say something. So like I said, I send out the email to everybody. I'm a spider, I'm weaving the web, whoever comes, I'm throwing the net, whoever comes. Out of the entire net, I sent another email for Capoeira. The only person who came was a Vietnamese woman. The entire University of Ghana campus, every single student, every single staff, the only person who came to that class was a Vietnamese woman. Again, I would think that somebody who's conscious would be interested in it, but that's not the case. So what do? Do I stop doing it myself? Or do I keep doing it, and then whoever is interested in it? Because sometimes I'll say something in a video, somebody will say, that's why I quit Facebook. I'm down with your thing now. You understand? I want to be consistent. You understand? And I also don't think that entertainment is innocuous at all. I think that is what changed within the last 50 to 100 years. I think that is how we saw this major change in the behavior. We've been doing this for 4 million years. I think that the entertainment is the way to get Eurasian thought to go down easier. It's the honey with which cesspoolian mentality is swallowed, because we're just seeing these things and just like, looks like, ha ha ha, I'm laughing, ha ha ha, this is cute. Oh, I just want to be like Superman. Oh, I just want to wear Nikes. You just want to go get the Coca-Cola, and you don't understand the product, not you, but we don't understand the product placement in this thing that I saw 5 years ago, that when I have the choice of Blue Skies juice or Coca-Cola, I go in, I say, oh, I just happen to want Coca-Cola. And I think one of the best scholars who deals with this is Amos Wilson. Again, you know, he goes into the entertainment, he goes into this alien being that's implanted in us, and it shows up in different ways. Like the brother was saying, like the China one, we all do it in little ways, but we don't really understand how did it get there. So my father, he says, you know, he looks at everybody like an agent, either professional or amateur. But we all have had this little white being implanted in us, and we don't know how it got there oftentimes. It gets there through entertainment as the #1. Even I'll put that before religion and education, because that's the one that's most innocuous. We're just laughing. There's nothing to it. Nobody has to force me to go to church. Nobody has. It's just cute, right? So that one, of course, the education, miseducation, diseducation, and anti-education is there. The religion is there, but these are all. But the other side of it is that if they have to do this multi-pronged full court press just to get us to be insane internally and in our behavior, this shows us, I would say, a degree of hope that they have to do all of that, but even despite that, there are some of us who aren't trying to go down with it. If I say I'm not going to see Black Panther, I don't think nobody else in the entire Ghana do I think will also make that decision. I think every single other person will do it, but because me personally, I don't want to finance my oppression, right? So anytime is not a necessity. So this is another thing my father says, disambiguating between what we need and what we want. So just on a personal level, if I say I don't need to see this, why would I go give my money to Disney knowing that they're going to build a prison with it?
Right, but when you make the case for financing your oppressor,
Right.
you're basically going to have to live like a Kalahari Bushman.
No.
No,
You don't.
Because-
You can take steps in the process.
because
That's what
even
de-whitenization
when you're
is.
talking about a Bibi Fahodie, it is on somebody's server somewhere.
Here in Ghana,
It's
which was a
someone's
choice.
Satellite that's not
Which
owned
was
by
a choice.
African.
Ultra Host Ghana. I could have gone with HostGator. I could have gone, but I decided to go with Ultra Host Ghana because that's here in Ghana. So these are the choices that we make because when we're talking about re-Africanization and de-whitenization, we're talking about a process. We're talking about a trajectory. We're trying to get somewhere. So
See,
if
that I think is where you have to clarify,
Mhm.
because it doesn't always come across clear
Mhm.
that you're talking about a process.
Mhm.
It's all of your own. Sometimes it comes across as a static statement.
Mhm.
That if you're not like right here, basically where you are right now, then you're falling short of the mark.
Mhm.
And I think I think your message will come across more clearly if that's the case. But I think that sometimes takes a backseat or a background to that, because I definitely agree that it's a process. And I also agree that there are a lot of intentional messages that are put in cartoons, commercials, all kinds of stuff. I always will agree on that. But I also know that at some point, whether it's a joke that somebody's telling, something could be embedded in that. Whether it's a particular area that a person chooses to live in and who also happens to be living in that area. So we're in proximity to this kind of person, something could be embedded in that. So because so many people look up to you, and understandably so, I think the onus is on you to really do emphasize that you're talking about a process. That because otherwise somebody could come through and maybe not receive something that you're saying and doing that they should receive, that you're saying and doing, because they can go out like, well, let's look at the car you're driving, let's look at the energy you're using, let's look at, and someone can just go through meticulously, right, and be like, nope. But if on the other hand you're emphasizing that this is a process, then I think a person who may be struggling, and here I'm talking about people who struggle, not people who try to be
He's not
funny.
there. The second office.
Somebody who's struggling,
He's there.
then be able to
He's not
look at
there.
that and really make some gain. Because now it's like, oh, okay, there's that process piece. Okay, all right, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm also in this process because I like my Nike tennis shoes, or I like my baseball caps, that kind of thing. So I'm not in disagreement as much as I'm saying that in terms of how things get emphasized. And a lot of the Pan-African speakers, when they're coming out, I mean, let's look at that. Where's the documentary on how come they all are not living somewhere on the continent, right? They're saying all this cool, amazing, phenomenal stuff, but why are they still over there saying it?
Some people like to be comfortable. So if you emphasize a process, that's when they say, oh, look, it's a process. And they never move. You understand? Because most people who I know, especially the conscious people, are the ones who have the biggest issues with making these moves. So just what you're saying about all these people who are saying a million things, they would like you to emphasize that it's a process so that they can be complacent and stay exactly where they are. You understand? I know I always talk about trajectory as more important than position, because look at these people who speak tree, look at their behavior. Look at these people who don't know any tree, but they would do anything to get 2 words of it. and the 2 words they know, they're going to use it every single day. To me, this trajectory, they're speaking tree, but they're speaking tree on their way to the U.S. Embassy. That's their trajectory is going towards the white destruction. Here are these people who don't have any of that, but their trajectory is going towards something African, and every single thing that's African that they could do, that's what they're trying to do. So just that same exact critique that you have for those people who don't come is the same critique for the ones that you're talking about who maybe may not receive the message. They may not be ready to receive the message. My parents were talking about all this stuff, and I would be like, I don't want to come to this lecture. Why I got to do that? As a teenager, at a certain point, something clicked, or a spiritual butt whipping happened, and then things click. So that's why if I see people who don't come here,